Ladies and gentlemen, you were not placed on this earth simply to clock in and clock out, to exchange hours of your life for numbers on a paycheck that barely reflect your potential. You were designed with intention, precision, and purpose. Before you even took your first breath, there was something already encoded within you, a unique combination of talents, desires, and inclinations that no one else in the history of humanity has ever had. That is not an accident, it's a calling. But somewhere along the way, society, tradition, and well-meaning voices began to tell you that the safe route was the only route. Find a job, they said. Hold on to it. Don't take risks. Don't dream too big. And so many people have done exactly that, settling into roles that do not feed their soul, trading the infinite possibilities of their life for the security of a fixed wage. The reason this happens is because we've been conditioned to believe that a job is the source of our security. But the truth is, a job is not the source. It's a channel. Your true source is far greater, far more abundant, and far more creative than any position, title, or corporate structure could ever offer. When you reduce your life to the pursuit of a job, you are essentially saying, I will confine my abilities to the limits someone else sets for me. That is like taking a majestic eagle and keeping it in a cage because it's easier to feed it there, never allowing it to fly in the vast open sky it was made for. Purpose is not found in the HR department. It's not something that comes in the form of a contract or an employment letter. Purpose is something you uncover when you begin to ask yourself bigger questions. What truly excites me? What do I do so naturally that I don't even realize it's a skill? What could I work on for hours without feeling drained? These are not questions most people are encouraged to ask. Instead, they're taught to ask, what jobs are available right now? Or what's the starting salary? And while these are practical concerns, they are not the foundation for a fulfilled life. When you operate from purpose, the work you do becomes an expression of who you are, not just a way to pay bills. This changes everything. Suddenly, you're not waiting for the weekend to live. You're not dreading Monday morning because the week ahead feels like a drain on your spirit. Instead, your days are driven by meaning, creativity, and a sense of contribution. You start to measure your life by the impact you make, not the hours you log. And here's the remarkable part. When you align with your purpose, opportunities often appear that would have been invisible to you before. People notice authenticity. They're drawn to passion. Doors open because your energy and your work resonate with something deeper than our RA summe. Unfortunately, the conventional path tries to convince you that your dreams should fit neatly into a job description. If they don't, you're told they're unrealistic. But think about every innovator, artist, entrepreneur, or leader who ever made a lasting mark. They didn't find their life's work listed on a job board. They created it. They listened to that inner nudge, that whisper telling them there was something more. And they followed it even when it made no sense to the people around them. That is the mindset that separates those who live a life of purpose from those who simply survive. A job can be a stepping stone, a season in your journey, but it is never meant to be the definition of who you are. You have skills and gifts that may never be called upon in a traditional role because they don't fit neatly into a corporate mold. The tragedy is that many people will go to their graves with their best ideas, inventions, and contributions still locked inside them because they were too busy doing what was practical. But practical is not always powerful, and safe is not always secure. In fact, some of the most secure jobs can disappear overnight with a market shift, a corporate restructuring, or a change in technology. When you build your life on your purpose instead of a paycheck, you're standing on something no recession, no layoff, no industry collapse can take away. There is something inside you that refuses to be reduced to a role. It's that quiet frustration you feel when you know you're capable of more. It's the restlessness that keeps you awake at night, imagining a different life, a bigger stage, a more meaningful contribution. That is not something to ignore. That is a signal. It's a call to stop looking for a position to fill and start creating the work you were meant to do. And yes, it takes courage. Yes, it requires you to step out of the comfort zone that a job can provide. But the reward is that you begin to live in alignment with the reason you were placed here in the first place. Every time you tell yourself, I need to find a job, you subtly program your mind to look for someone else to give you permission to work, to create, to contribute. But you don't need permission. You already have authority over your own life. You were designed with a blueprint for contribution that no hiring manager can issue and no company can revoke. That's why chasing a paycheck without pursuing your calling will always leave you feeling like something is missing. You can have the salary, the benefits, the title, and still feel empty inside. That's because deep down, your spirit knows it was not placed here simply to trade time for money. Instead of asking, who will hire me? Begin asking, what was I born to do? This is a radically different question, and it leads to radically different results. It forces you to dig deeper than your RA sum A. It forces you to explore the gifts you've overlooked, the passions you've suppressed, the dreams you've dismissed as unpractical. You'll realize that you're not here to fit into a system. You're here to build, to create, to lead, to inspire, to innovate. And that's when you stop chasing opportunities and start attracting them, because you are operating in the flow of your true design, not in the limitations of a job description. Everything you see around you, the clothes you wear, the building you're in, and the device you're reading this on first existed as an idea in someone's mind. Before it became something you could touch or experience, it lived in the unseen realm of thought. That's how powerful the mind is. It takes what is invisible and makes it visible. Your entire life is being shaped the same way, whether you realize it or not. The reality you live in today is the direct result of the images, beliefs, and expectations that have been occupying your mind in the past. If your thoughts have been limited, your results have been limited. If your thoughts have been expansive, your life reflects that expansiveness. We have been taught to believe that circumstances shape our thinking. But the truth is, it's the other way around. Our thinking shapes our circumstances. If you constantly see yourself as someone struggling, someone stuck, someone unlucky, your mind will filter and interpret the world in ways that reinforce that image. You'll spot obstacles more than opportunities. You'll interpret setbacks as signs that you should give up rather than as lessons that could push you forward. The human mind is not just a storage space for memories. It's a projector that casts your inner images onto the screen of your life. Change the picture you're projecting, and the story you're living begins to change too. Most people never take control of their mental picture. They think they're thinking, but what they're really doing is replaying old thoughts on a loop. The same doubts, the same worries, the same limitations keep repeating themselves until they become mental habits. And just like any habit, the more you repeat it, the stronger it becomes. The challenge is that the mind doesn't care whether the image you hold is empowering or destructive. It will work to make it real either way. It's like fertile soil that doesn't judge the seeds you plant. It simply grows whatever you put in it. If you plant seeds of fear, scarcity, and self-doubt, don't be surprised when you harvest more fear, scarcity, and self-doubt in your life. But the reverse is equally true. If you deliberately plant seeds of abundance, confidence, and possibility, your mind will begin to reorganize your perceptions, your decisions, and your actions to align with that new vision. This is why people who seem lucky are often just people who have trained their minds to see opportunity where others see nothing. Their inner picture is so clear and compelling that they naturally take actions and make choices that move them toward it, even if they don't consciously recognize that's what they're doing. It's important to understand that your mind operates in images, not just in words. You can say to yourself, I want to be successful. But if the image in your mind when you think of success is vague, conflicting, or tainted with fear, you will unconsciously sabotage yourself. On the other hand, if you see yourself clearly living that success, feeling it, hearing it, walking through it in your imagination, your mind begins to treat it as something real, and it will work tirelessly to close the gap between where you are and where that picture places you. This isn't wishful thinking. This is the way the subconscious mind works, constantly seeking to make your dominant thoughts your actual experience. This is why you cannot afford to let negative images dominate your mind. Every time you dwell on what could go wrong, on the mistakes you've made, on the failures you fear, you are literally rehearsing a future you don't want. The more you practice that mental rehearsal, the more skilled you become at living in that unwanted reality. And yet so many people give more mental time and energy to their fears than to their vision. They wake up thinking about problems, spend the day talking about them, and go to bed worrying about them. Then they wonder why nothing changes. The truth is, something is changing. Their mind is reinforcing the very patterns they wish to break, to shift your reality. You must take control of your inner environment as fiercely as you would protect your home from an intruder. That means being deliberate about what you focus on. It means replacing images of defeat with images of triumph, replacing stories of limitation with stories of possibility, and refusing to let your imagination be hijacked by the negative influences around you. This takes discipline at first because the mind tends to run on autopilot, repeating whatever is familiar. But the moment you interrupt those old patterns with a new empowered image, you begin to rewrite the script. When you consistently hold a clear, emotionally charged image of the life you want, you activate a part of your brain that starts scanning for anything that matches that image. You'll hear conversations you might have ignored before. You'll notice chances you would have walked past without a thought. You'll meet people who can help you, not because they weren't there before, but because your mind wasn't tuned to recognize them. This is not magic, it's focus. You can walk into a crowded room and If you've just bought a new red car, suddenly notice every other red car in the parking lot. They were always there, but your mind wasn't tuned to them until you gave it that directive. The same thing happens when you feed your mind a consistent image of your desired life. You have to remember that your mind is not your enemy, but it can be your jailer if you let it run wild with unexamined thoughts. You are the architect of the inner picture, and that picture becomes the blueprint for your outer world. If you want a different life, you must first create a different picture and hold it with unwavering faith, even when the current circumstances seem to contradict it. That's where most people give up. They let the outer world dictate their inner image, not realizing that the outer world is just a delayed reflection of the inner one. If you can learn to reverse that flow, to let your mind lead instead of follow, then you can begin to experience change, not as a slow grind of effort, but as a natural consequence of holding a vision so strongly that reality has no choice but to catch up. Fear is one of the most powerful forces in the human experience, but is also one of the most deceptive. It often disguises itself as logic, caution, or practicality, whispering reasons why you shouldn't take a step forward. It paints vivid pictures of everything that could go wrong, of losses you might face, of humiliation you might endure if you fail. And because the mind responds so intensely to emotion, these pictures can feel more real than the reality you're currently living. Fear thrives on imagination, turning the unknown into something threatening before you've even taken the first step. It doesn't need proof. It only needs your agreement. The moment you agree with it, you hand over the keys to your potential and lock yourself into the familiar. Faith, on the other hand, is also a force of imagination, but it works in the opposite direction. It takes that same unknown and paints it in possibility. It projects a future where you succeed, where challenges strengthen you, where what you desire actually comes to pass. Faith doesn't require proof either. It requires belief. It's the decision to place your energy and expectation on what can go right instead of what can go wrong. It's a lens you choose to wear, one that shapes how you interpret every event, every setback, every opportunity. Where fear says, "What if you fail?" Faith counters, "But what if you succeed?" Where fear says, "You're not ready," faith responds, "You'll grow as you go." The reason faith is so powerful is because it changes the way you move through life. Fear makes you hesitate. Faith makes you act. And it is action that shapes destiny. You can have all the talent in the world, all the ideas, all the resources, but if fear keeps you from taking the leap, they remain locked inside you, never given the chance to become real. Faith pushes you past that threshold, past the trembling in your stomach, past the doubt in your mind, into the territory where transformation happens. The people who achieve extraordinary things are not those who never feel fear. They are the ones who refuse to bow to it. They feel it, acknowledge it, but choose to step forward anyway, holding on to faith as the anchor that keeps them steady. Fear often masquerades as protection, but what it's really doing is suffocating potential. It convinces you to play small, to avoid risk, to seek safety in the familiar. But the familiar is not where growth happens. Growth lives in the space beyond your comfort zone, in the arena where you're forced to develop new skills, adopt new perspectives, and rise to new challenges. Faith is what allows you to enter that arena willingly. It doesn't promise you an absence of struggle. It promises that the struggle will serve you. It says that even the setbacks will teach you something essential, even the obstacles will strengthen you, and that nothing you face will be wasted. One of the greatest misunderstandings about fear and faith is the idea that one will eventually eliminate the other. The truth is, they often coexist. You can feel fear in your chest and still choose to speak, move, or act in faith. You can hear the voice of doubt in your mind and still take the step forward. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to proceed despite it. And every time you choose faith over fear, you weaken fear's grip. You teach your mind that the unknown is not as dangerous as it tries to make it seem, and you build a track record of experiences where stepping forward led to growth, connection, and opportunity. Fear thrives in uncertainty, but faith thrives there too. The difference is the story you attach to that uncertainty. When you see it as a void filled with potential, you begin to move toward it with curiosity instead of shrinking back in dread. Your body responds differently. Your posture changes. Your energy shifts. People sense it in you. That unshakable belief that even if the path twists and turns, it will ultimately lead you somewhere worthwhile. And because like attracts like, that energy begins to draw circumstances and people into your life that match it. Opportunities that were invisible before start showing up, not because they didn't exist, but because fear kept you from seeing or reaching for them. Faith requires you to trust in something bigger than your current circumstances, whether that's a vision you've seen in your mind, a deep inner knowing, or a belief in a higher power guiding your steps. It calls you to make decisions based not on where you are, but on where you're going. That means sometimes you'll act before you feel ready, invest before you see the return. Commit before you have all the answers. Fear waits for perfect conditions, but faith knows perfect conditions never come. It understands that the moment you move, conditions begin to shift in your favor. The act of stepping forward changes the landscape, creates momentum, and signals to life itself that you are ready to receive more than you have now. Fear can paralyze the mind, but faith energizes it. When you believe something good is on the way, your creativity opens up. You start to think of solutions instead of problems, strategies instead of excuses. Faith fuels perseverance, keeping you in the game long enough to see results. It's what allows you to keep showing up even when there's no immediate evidence that your efforts are working, because you understand that seeds take time to grow. Fear digs up the seed to check if it's sprouting yet. Faith waters it consistently, trusting that growth is happening beneath the surface. The shift from fear to faith is not a single decision you make once. It's a choice you make over and over again, sometimes multiple times in the same day. Every time you face a challenge, you will have the option to let fear dictate your response or to let faith guide it. Each choice builds a habit. Each habit shapes your character. And over time, your character determines the life you live. When you choose faith consistently, you begin to live with a quiet confidence that even if the path ahead is unclear, you have the strength, the resourcefulness, and the resilience to navigate it. This is not blind optimism. It's a grounded certainty that the same force that brought you this far will carry you further still. Negative feelings are not a life sentence. They are indicators, signals from within telling you that something in your thinking, your perception, or your focus has drifted out of alignment with who you truly are and what you truly want. Yet most people treat these feelings as if they are permanent truths, wearing them like heavy coats they can never take off. They mistake the emotion for identity, saying things like, I am anxious, or I am hopeless, without realizing that they are not the emotion, they are the one experiencing it. This subtle but powerful distinction changes everything. The moment you stop confusing yourself with your feelings, you reclaim the ability to change them. Emotions follow thoughts like shadows follow light. They are not random, though they can appear to be if you are unaware of the thinking that produces them. When you feel discouraged, it is almost always because you have been dwelling on images or ideas of loss, lack, or failure. When you feel inspired, it's because you have been focusing on what excites you, what feels possible, and what you can create. This means your feelings are valuable feedback tools, telling you where your attention has been. If your emotions are consistently negative, it is a sign that your mental attention is consistently pointed toward what you do not want rather than what you do. The problem is that negative feelings can be addictive. They pull your attention like gravity, tempting you to replay old disappointments, rehearse worst-case scenarios, or dwell on unfair circumstances. The more you entertain them, the more convincing they become. Your mind will start supplying evidence to justify them, memories of past failures, interpretations of current events, even imagined outcomes in the future, all designed to reinforce the emotion and keep it alive. And because your subconscious mind is wired to seek consistency between your inner state and your outer actions, you will start to behave in ways that match the emotion. This is how temporary feelings can turn into long-term states of being if left unchallenged. To overcome negative feelings, you must first become aware of them without judgment. Too many people try to fight their emotions head on, which only amplifies them. What you resist, you persist. Instead, approach them with curiosity. What am I thinking that's producing this feeling? What mental picture am I holding right now? By tracing the emotion back to its source, you gain clarity, and with clarity comes choice. You cannot control every circumstance, but you can control the story you tell yourself about it. And it's that story, not the circumstance itself, that fuels the emotion. Once you've identified the thought or image driving the feeling, the next step is to consciously replace it with one that serves you better. This doesn't mean slapping a forced positive thought over a deeply rooted belief and hoping it sticks. It means deliberately shifting your focus to something that genuinely evokes a better emotional state. This could be a memory of a time you succeeded against the odds, a vision of the future you want to create, or even gratitude for something you already have. The mind cannot hold two conflicting images with equal strength for long. Whichever one you feed will grow and the other will fade. Another key to transforming negative feelings is movement, both mental and physical. When you are stuck in an emotional slump, your body language reflects its shoulders slump, breathing shallow, energy low. Changing your physical state can have an immediate impact on your emotional state. Stand tall, breathe deeply, move with purpose, and you send a signal to your mind that something has shifted. Pair this with a mental shift, reading something inspiring, listening to empowering words, visualizing your desired outcome, and you create a feedback loop that lifts you out of the negative spiral. It's also important to understand that negative feelings often arise when there's a gap between your actions and your values or goals. If you say you want something but consistently behave in ways that move you away from it, your inner self will create emotional discomfort to get your attention. This discomfort is not punishment, it's guidance. It's the same principle as physical pain alerting you to an injury. It's there to prompt corrective action. By viewing your feelings as guidance rather than burdens, you can use them as a navigational system instead of a prison. Negative feelings also lose their power when you stop personalizing them. If you treat them as passing weather patterns rather than permanent forecasts, you are less likely to be trapped by them. The rain may be falling now, but it does not define the climate. Similarly, a moment of sadness or frustration does not define your identity or your destiny. This detachment allows you to witness the feeling without becoming consumed by it, which makes it easier to let it pass. One of the most effective ways to weaken the grip of negative emotions is to focus on contribution. When you shift your attention from your own frustrations to how you can serve, help, or uplift others, you interrupt the self-centered loop that keeps negativity alive. Acts of generosity and service naturally produce feelings of connection, purpose, and satisfaction, which cannot coexist with prolonged despair or bitterness. This is why even small acts of kindness can have an outsized impact on your mood. Finally, remember that your emotional state is not just a private experience. It influences the opportunities, relationships, and circumstances you attract. People are drawn to energy. They respond to the vibration you carry, even if they can't articulate why. Negative feelings project an energy that tends to repel opportunity and connection, while positive feelings project an energy that draws them in. By learning to recognize, interrupt, and transform negative states quickly, you not only improve your inner world, but also reshape the outer world that responds to you.